What is up, everybody out there? Staying up late on the East Coast, watching some college basketball. We got the Champions Classic to talk about, maybe a little Gavitt games, but of course, you're listening and watching to ECB After Hours. And we're coming off the heels literally just less than 5 minutes ago off of an incredible titanic clash between Kentucky and Kansas, in which Kansas pulls one out late. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Michigan State Duke game before that. Probably throwing a little Marquette, Illinois. I think those are probably the three marquee games. But joining me in this late night edition of After Hours, got my teammates Peyton Burton, Trevor Everett. And game one might have put us to sleep, but I know game two, Kansas, Kentucky, woke everybody the hell up.
It was the main event for a reason. Kentucky versus Kansas, number one versus number two in all-time wins. Two of the greatest programs of all time. Two heavyweight colossals going back and forth. And man, what a fucking game that was. If you're just a fan of college basketball and you have no allegiance to Kansas or Kentucky, what a damn game. This is what college basketball is all about. All of that first week about people bitching about the slate, this is what we've all been waiting for. It's a Champions Classic in Chicago, Illinois, and what a damn game we just witnessed there.
If you throw in Creighton, Iowa, that just went final 92-84 by Creighton, you had, I would call it, I think ESPN calls it Super Tuesday. I know they didn't label it this as that, but because you had some Fox Sports games in there, but this was a Super Tuesday without a doubt. I'm excited to dive into it.
Yeah, and we are live on the Twitter and the YouTube, so come join and follow us along at ECB Podcast 10 on the Twitter, and just search up everything college basketball on the YouTube. Drop a subscribe and a follow. We've already got some people in here. Shout out our friend Connor McCabe, Kansas Jayhawk fan. I know he is feeling pretty good right now, but let's go ahead and start with this game. It was the second one of the two, but it was, I mean, the season's early. It's what, we're 8 days into the season starting, but this is the game of the season so far through the first 8 days. Like, Arizona Duke was incredible, but you talking about two heavyweights, throwing body shots, throwing haymakers to the head, just going back and forth. It was Hagler Hearns. For those who understand the old boxing reference from the 1980s, the incredible fight of Marvin Hagler and I forget Hearns' first name, but just throwing haymakers back and forth. This is what this was. And Kansas does come out with the win, 89-84. In a game in which they found themselves down 14 at one point early in the second half. I think what this shows is Kansas didn't reinvent the wheel. This game played out exactly how we all predicted it leading up to this game. Kansas was going to exploit the size inside, which Kentucky lacked with the 3 7-footers out, and Kentucky was going to use their incredible guard play and athleticism and speed to speed Kansas up. And when both teams made their runs, that's exactly what happened. Kentucky sped Kansas up. They couldn't hang in transition. Kansas was able to slow it down, pound it inside. Dickinson went for, what do you have, 27 and 21. 27 points, 21 rebounds. Just in an incredible contest. I'm going to let you guys take the first volley on early thoughts on this game, because win or lose, I feel like this is one of those games. Kentucky obviously comes away with a loss in the loss column, but I feel like both profiles got raised in this contest.
Go ahead, Tyler.
No, look, I'll keep it short and sweet, because I think we're going to touch on, I think you two are going to touch on everything. Honestly, a lot of my thoughts came from Kentucky's end of things. I'll just put it out there for fun, because I do actually believe it. Reed Shepherd might be the best player on the team whenever he's firing. And, like, honestly, I know that late shot at the end was crazy, and people are immediately probably going to lose their mind right now. But I'm just going to defend from the fact that other than that bad shot at the end that he understood he shouldn't have taken based on the body language after the fact. Coach Cal didn't tear him apart for it. We didn't at least see that, which I thought was interesting. I think that speaks to some of the way he coaches, and I think that was actually a good thing there, because it was a lesson I think he learned live in the moment. But his defensive motor is really, really good. I was really impressed, and obviously he came off the bench, and you've tweeted many times, I think in the last 48 hours, Josh, that he probably needs to play or start, excuse me. And honestly, just because of the two-way ability, I was really impressed with him. I'm obviously, a bit of a stretch there on the best player thing, but when he's hot and he's able to push that defensive motor, I'm really impressed. The one thing I'll really say that kind of just, opened my eyes, and I'll admit that, I did not come into this year with the expectation of, hey, I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt that I may have given a team with a little bit more experience, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think there's a lot of people that, didn't have them ranked in the top 25 preseason, which undoubtedly so. They deserve to be there, like you mentioned. I think they're scary, and here's why. I don't care about the experience sometimes because honestly, I think, granted, in the NCAA tournament, we're going to see where experience will win out, right? Obviously, an example of like a Baylor a couple years ago, right? That was a huge, huge reason that they won the national title with their experience at that kind of style of play. The other thing I'll say is when you get a guy like Bradshaw back, who I got a chance to see last year, I've made that point many times, like he is not going to lose you anything on the shooting end of things, being a big that can stretch the floor, at least reliably. And then just having a guy like that, and obviously you guys got some other bigs as well you got to bring back. But I think just Bradshaw's impact coming back soon is going to be unbelievable for this team because it's only going to unlock even more potential.
And I completely agree. And think about, too, we kind of seen Aaron Bradshaw play, so we know, like you've seen him firsthand. But they say Big Z, Zvonimir Ivicic, at 7 foot, they say he is like young Kristaps Porzingis, the way he shoots the ball from three, the way he can put the ball on the deck and attack the rim, and the way he blocks shots. So if you bring it, just those two back changes as far as the length and adds to this team, it's scary time for people playing Kentucky.
Phil and I told the story. We were both in attendance last year for when the name of the school is slipping my mind now. Wagner's team, Bradshaw's
Camden
high school team. Thank you, Camden. I knew it was New Jersey. I just couldn't get the team out. We both went in that arena looking for to see what Wagner was going to look like. I mean, I brought my wife, the whole thing. I was like, we're going to watch this kid play tonight. I don't care how we do it. Phil was there, of course, on media credential. I had to pay a steep ticket price. Long story short, I left with Aaron Bradshaw thoughts that I did not even know I had. So I was like, look, this guy, obviously high impact player on both ends. It's something I'm really looking forward to. Only thing else I really have, obviously there's some Kansas thoughts I'm sure we'll get to in just a moment. Rob Dillingham, first of all, I want to make it clear that he could be in a red and black uniform, but he chose to obviously, he committed, pulled back, the whole thing. I'm going to leave that alone because I'm probably not the only one. I sent you guys a meme earlier about it. But look, his ability to get downhill, as an NBA draft just aspect really quick, his unbelievable ability to get downhill with that kind of speed, it forces defenses to collapse so quickly that when he isn't played like that, I know under the screens tonight was a big deal for them, but when he's able to get open, he can make a three. And we know that that's not something that he'll do every night, but we know it's something that we can at least know that is there and have to be taken, into account. And I think he showed that. Again, that ability and that kind of speed to get end to end that fast is going to open up so much potential for that team. And obviously, again, I mentioned Reed Shepard earlier, kind of tying back everything and landing my plane here, is it opens up the ability to get the shooters open in a more effective manner because of the ability of his downhill speed. So unbelievable performance.
And we're going to talk about Kentucky, but on the Rob Dillingham, Kentucky is losing this game in the first half, and Kansas starts out 8-0. Kentucky's trying to fight their way back, and the game changed when Rob comes in and just starts flamethrowing. Hits 4 threes in 90 seconds and sets up the fifth to Antonio Reeves to stretch the lead to 36-30. I mean, incredible. But let's focus on Kansas since they are the victors of this ball game, 89-84. Peyton, a couple things outside of Hunter Dickinson, because we kind of expected this, or at least we thought this would be the game plan. I just continue to be impressed with DeJuan Harris. I didn't even think he played that great defensively tonight. He wasn't bad. But he wasn't great because I thought even him had trouble with Kentucky's guards getting in the transition and getting downhill. But it was his offensive game, controlling the floor, finding guys on the little circle cuts, keeping the dribble alive, hanging in the air, finding the right guy on the cuts. And then when it was time for him to step up, he hit those back-to-back threes to give Kansas the lead under 2 minutes to go or under 2.5 to go that Kentucky could never really get back. His development into an offensive threat when he chooses to be continues to impress the hell out of me. And for once, we're talking about the offensive end and not the defensive end. I thought DeJuan Harris was phenomenal tonight.
Dude, DeJuan Harris, I said it last year. I said when it's all said and done, he's done with his career at Kansas, that he might go down as my all-time favorite Jayhawk. I'm already ready to say that now. This dude is so fucking fun to watch. Just from the defensive side, yeah, he struggled a lot, but that's also a lot of credit goes to Rob Dillingham and Antonio Reeves. Those are two guys, for one, who are really quick, who are definitely faster than him. Two, have the size advantage over him, so they can shoot over him pretty easily. So I think that's had a lot to do with him struggling. He also had 4 turnovers, and majority of them was in the first half, just doing uncharacteristic things. When Kentucky saw him made the run, he just throwing the ball away, just doing stupid shit that he normally doesn't do. But overall, I mean, 23 points, 5 or 6 from the 3-point. The only 3 he missed was that 3 seconds ago, the shot clock, he had to throw it up there. That's the only 3 he missed. He had 2 rebounds, 7 assists. I mean, this kid played so damn well. Hunter Dickinson was obviously going to get the majority of the love like he deserves. 27 points, 21 rebounds. He's 10-11 for the free throw line. He's the first Jayhawk since 2003 to have a 20-20 game, and that was Nick Collison who did that, by the way. So he's going to get majority of the love. Kevin McCullough had a triple-double. He had 12, 10, and 10. He played great despite being in foul trouble. KJ Adams played pretty well despite going out with foul trouble or fouling out of the game. I just think overall, what a game. And, dude, shout-outs on Sunday. I might have 10 damn shout-outs just from players from both sides of the floor. Because I thought Kansas, a lot of our players played pretty damn well that you expected. But guys like Adi Fierro played really well. He was all over the floor. He was rebounding. He was hustling. He was defending well. He was going after the glass every single time. I thought he played his ass off. Obviously, Tony Reeves did what he did. Rob Dillingham did what he did. Holy shit, what a fucking day.
Yeah.
You made a really good point about the foul trouble I want to make a point of, because when a team like Kansas has that much experience, and obviously some guys coming into the transfer portal, Timberlake and others, when you have that much foul trouble, especially in the second half, and you're able to still, I don't feel like you take any kind of step back defensively, like that just speaks to the level of play that I think this Kansas team can get to. I'll give you the devil's advocate part of that later when I kind of give you an overview thought I want to share. One other thing that you said I thought was interesting, talking about the love for DeJuan Harris, I'll kind of just give you something to think about that I noticed that I'm not a Kansas fan. I don't follow the team as closely, obviously, right? But just one thing to think about, and this actually may speak more, and this will be a great transition for Josh. This may speak more to what I think about Kentucky and how good I think they were tonight when, this kind of close of a game, right? A 5-point game. We all know, I think it was a little bit closer than that, right? 2 points there, and obviously back and forth, the final score doesn't always verdict that. But for you to get a career high, you mentioned that basically, let's just call it a perfect shooting night because that's what it was, right? For Harris, for you to get a career high out of a guy like Harris and it still be a 5-point game against like freshman guards, that makes me nervous slightly because I know that obviously guys like Timberlake aren't getting into the shooting flow a little bit. So I don't want to overreact to it, but just 2 things to think about there. Where the foul trouble was impressive, and then the 3-point shooting from Harris, obviously we know can be sustainable, but we don't need to rely on it.
I think it's a really good point because, especially early on, Kansas got out to 11-3 score. We was up 11-3. As soon as the game started, we was up 11-3. And that was with our starting 5 into the game. But once we started subbing in, we got Johnny Furphy in. We got, who was it?
Nicholas Timberlake.
Timberlake in. Once we got those guys involved, then defensively we struggled, and offensively we struggled as well because they weren't hitting shots at all. They weren't getting open, forcing a lot of dumb shots, to be honest, specifically in that first half. So I agree. I think our depth outside of DeJuan Harris and our guard spot is going to be a very, very question. But it's early in the season. Same thing with people probably. I'm sure a lot of people like Goodman's going to talk shit about DeJuan Wagner and how he played awful. And Justin Edwards didn't have the greatest game as well. He only had 1 point, and that was from a free throw. Give these guys time to get better because once the season gets around, we get into January, December, we get into conference play. I guarantee the majority of these players are starting to get involved in the system, and they're starting to perform better than what they did in this game.
Well, how about a couple before we talk about the things Kansas scares us with? We'll continue the love train. You mentioned Kevin McCullough, triple-double, and I don't even think it was his most effective night in the crazy part because he had to do a little bit of everything in this ball game, and that's exactly what he did, dishing the ball, obviously rebounding, scoring when necessary. But how about a guy, you look at the stat line, and it only shows 2 points, but to put the game out of reach with a pair of clutch free throws at the end, the freshman McDowell coming in, just hitting a couple free throws. Braun only had the one big dunk, but he found himself in position a lot of times defensively to knock a pass away, to help tip a rebound to somebody else. But with that being said, Kansas's lack of depth coming off the bench is what's going to be their downfall. We said this coming into the game, Peyton, when we had DeRosa on previewing this. They got 4 points out of their bench, but it was more than just the points. When guys go out, when KJ Adams fouls out, or Kevin McCullough is in foul trouble, or God forbid, like we've talked about, Hunter Dickinson goes out, you have to rely on guys like Braun or Furphy. Furphy did not hit a shot at all. All he did was basically had 1 rebound and 3 fouls the whole night. He got taken completely out of the game by the athleticism. And so you worry about Kansas's depth, but that starting 5 is as good as any starting 5 in the country. They had 4 of the starting 5 in double figures in this ball game.
Yeah.
So you worry about it, but I thought Kansas 6 of 18 from the 3-point line when they were been hitting 10 or more coming into tonight. They out-rebounded an athletic Kentucky team by 4. I know the size advantage. They out-assisted, which Kentucky coming into tonight shares the ball, hops the ball, passes the ball so well. Even during runs throughout the game, Kentucky moves the ball. They had more assists than them, 22-14 on the night. Got to the foul line more. So Kansas proved their experience paid off why they're the number 1 team in the country. They found themselves in an absolute war, an absolute dogfight, and they just made a couple plays at the end. Because honestly, if we're being realistic, whoever was going to win this game, it was going to be 1 or 2 plays, and that was it. That's all that separates these 2 teams. Now, on the Kentucky end of things, it's a heartbreaker, right? You want to win a game like that you find yourself up 14 on the number 1 team in the country. But holy shit, there's some stuff to be excited about. And I know we've touched on it. 12 of 38 from 3 is not a great percentage. It's only 31.6%. But it's the fact that, A, you're shooting them, you're spreading teams out. You've got so many different guards options that can shoot, can dribble, can pass, can defend. I actually thought for the lack of size, they defended pretty well. Even though they did give up 89 points, I know that's kind of heresy to say, but I actually thought they defended their ass off. Adou Thiero was going to be a monster. 16 points, 13 rebounds, did everything, tried to match up with Hunter Dickinson, tip back dunks. And this is, again, with all out 2 of your top 5 freshmen in the country coming into this class this year. 2 kids, 1 projected to be maybe the number 1 pick. Justin Edwards and DJ Wagner combined for 5 points. And you only got beat by 5 points as a total. There's a lot to like about this Kentucky team, even in the loss. And I'm going to say it, and you can say it's my my fandom or whatever you want to say. But I think Kentucky, especially when they get at least one of the 7-footers, but when they start to get the full team together, the Cats are going to be a top 5 team in the country by the end of the year. Tell me why I wouldn't think any different after tonight.
Honestly, look, as somebody who was probably the most coercively self-doubtful out of any one of us here, I don't think it's a bad shout. And honestly, I'll give you my reasoning for why. Actually, no, we'll save it for when we're done with the Champions Classic. Look, they impressed me. 7 of the 8 players that played are listed at guard. On ESPN, just a quick caveat, like when talking about good guards win in March, when you have 7 of them that you really, really like and 5 that you really, really want out there at all times, and I know that's impossible right there. But Thiero plays obviously bigger than that. You mentioned him. Mm-hmm. I think the 13 rebounds spoke to that. Obviously, Mitchell probably could have been more effective on the boards, but I think that's not his fault. Probably just being the only guy that was 6'9" or taller on the floor probably is obviously a detriment to just the style of play this game was putting him into. 17 3-point attempts for Reeves makes me a little. I know a lot of them were down the stretch there when they went to the ISO play. We talked about that a little bit already, but I mean, look, I'm absolutely impressed. And again, to have this kind of game, and for Justin Edwards, who I know I made the Shepherd comments earlier, him arguably being the best player, right? There's a lot of debate for that. I'm impressed thoroughly. And look, one thing to speak back to the Shepherd thing I forgot to mention earlier is they put McCullough on Shepherd late in the game, even after he had kind of cooled down there, just to show you how effective their offense really was, even when they went through that spot where they were having those isolation spells. Like, even to think like Kansas was like under 2 minutes, we're putting a guy like McCullough, who was having a really, really good night defensively, to put him on Shepherd late in the game just shows you how potent the Kentucky offense can be. Even if it wasn't at that current time, you still had to take them seriously, which I think is what is important to know.
A couple things to put a bow on this game, move on. I guess final thoughts. Obviously, it's a growing experience, learning experience for these young guys. They took some bad shots. We talked about it. They're up 6 with 3:46 to go. A chance to really gain separation and get a massive marquee win over the number 1 team of the country. And you take some bad shots, turn the ball over, which they don't turn the ball over. They do not. And then they had a couple unforced, we'll say, turnovers, and then some really bad shot selection. But it's a young team that hopefully they learn from and they grow from. So when they play Miami in 2 weeks, you look ahead to Miami. I think at the beginning of the year, seeing that that's in November, even though it's in Rupp Arena, I think the majority of the national media that covers the sport like we do would look at that game and say, Miami coming off a Final Four, their experience, they've got all these veteran guards, they got Norchad Omier, Kentucky still may not have their bigs, Miami may be a point or two favorite. I think when you look at this now going into Rupp Arena with this team, I think Kentucky has the potential to not only beat Miami in 2 weeks, but run them completely out of Rupp Arena. And I think even in a loss, you learn something, and I think Kentucky is proven, no matter what anybody wants to say, that they are a top 15 ball club, even in a loss tonight.
I tell you what, a lot of people listening to this probably think you're overreacting, but here's the thing. I don't think so at all. I do think, especially in like early January, I think it wouldn't shock me if Kentucky's a top 5 team in the country. I think Kentucky now, just watching this game alone, I think Kentucky wins the SEC, and I think they do it pretty comfortably, especially when they get at least a couple of their 7-footers back, even just one 7-footer back. I really like this squad. I think they have a lot of talent, and it just showed out. They all bought out. The fact, and you just mentioned it, I was about to talk about it as well. The one thing that I specifically want to talk about Kentucky that's impressed me so far, they've only played 3 games, but the fact that they're backed by a young freshman at the guard spot and only had 8 turnovers against a Kansas team who's pretty damn good defensively, has 2 really good on-ball guards in Kevin McCullough and DeJuan Harris, and 2 pretty solid wing defenders and KJ Adams and Michael Jackson. Only having 8 turnovers, they don't turn the ball over that well. Much.
And what was it? Like I said, 3 or 4 at the end was unforced, where they didn't need to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's probably the most surprising stat I can probably bring up, is the fact that they don't turn the ball over, even though they're backed by freshman guards. I like this Kentucky team. There's a lot of talent surrounding them. I do think in the second half they fell too much in love with the 3 ball. A lot of bad contested threes that they did not need, specifically that last one with Reed Shepherd, which is 5 seconds on the clock. You didn't need to do that. You could have got to the rim, maybe kicked it out. That's just freshman mistakes. I get that. But, dude, overall, I mean, I get it. You know, me being a Kansas fan, you being a Kentucky fan, there's no such thing as more victories. We know this. There's a lot of good to go about this Kentucky squad in this game. And I said in the first half, hopefully this first half shuts Jeff Goodman and John Fainter up for good, because that first half alone, and then the second half obviously just got to my point even quicker. Kentucky's really fucking good.
Look, I won't add anything else. I will just say this. I'm clearing my schedule for whatever I'm doing for that first Tennessee-Kentucky matchup in SEC play. I will disagree with Peyton for running away with it easily because of what we've seen from Tennessee so far, especially about the Wisconsin thing. By the way, I put some feelers out there for some folks in Madison, and I was like, hey, is this Wisconsin? I knew the Indiana thing. I thought that was crazy when you shared that with me. Still can't believe it. But, I put some feelers out there. I'm like, is Madison really a tough place to play? And they're like, that Tennessee win was impressive. And I said, okay, all right, fair play. So 23 minutes, and I'm surprised we only went 23 minutes on this game. And honestly, I'm an unbiased party in this, and I could have went another 17 minutes with it. So I'm proud of you two for getting this in 12 minutes each, basically.
Well, you know what? And listen, predicted Kansas to win. They won, but god dang, Kentucky gave everything they had and cleaned a couple things up. And I think we're going to smack some folks this year. I really do. I
give you both credit because you both made a really good point. I wasn't on Sunday Spot, of course, but you guys made a really good point of what does your heart say, and then what does your analyst brain say? And honestly, both pretty much spot on. And it went about. I mean, honestly, this could have been a 1-point game, and it was probably the same result. So, again, I think fair point.
Good win for Kansas. They do officially pull back within 4 games of the all-time wins list, but both teams, I think, is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Let's go to the first game of the night that was, if we're being completely frank, was a snoozer. Duke gets the win coming off the loss against Arizona on Friday. They win 74-65. Michigan State's now lost twice in a week in the first week of college basketball. And I did not think that either team was going to crack 20 points in the first half. I just didn't. They could not shoot. They, at one point, were, I think, going into halftime, they combined for 4 of 23 or something from 3. it was brutal. To put it mildly, it was brutal. Second half, towards the end, it got a little better. Michigan State started hitting some because Tyson Walker started finally taking over. The dude's incredible to watch. He just needs help. Completely disappointed with Jaden Atkins, AJ Hoggard again. Hoggard he played 31 minutes, 2 points in a big ball game again. It just Duke on the other end though, Filipowski's a stud, and you got to give some love. I know DeRosa on Sunday's show was kind of poking fun at him, but Ryan Young, 8 points in this game, 7 rebounds, and he even if he didn't have those points and rebounds, his effect on the floor, making the right play at the right time, always in this ball game, I think really sparked Duke. And then Caleb Foster, the freshman, 18 points, just down the stretch, hitting big shot. He killed Michigan State under 2 minutes, hitting back-to-back threes and pretty much iced the game. So Duke's got pieces. They just need to continually have some of these guys step up.
Well, it showed their versatility too. It just showed how deep and how strong the team. The Ryan Young point, like, of course, playing 100,000, I think, in 3 games, I think he's played or something like that. I think it's 103,000 games. No, it's like 130. I'm just kidding.
Of course, yeah.
No, but obviously he's played Michigan State a handful of times. He knows how to play against a team like a Tom Izzo coach team as well over there, spending 4 years at Northwestern. And then this game was built for him more. The physicality of it, the ability to take advantage of a freshman front court. Quite frankly, I'm going to spare you the notes that I have of some of the stuff. Obviously, Filipowski got in foul trouble early. That was a really big point coming into this. Michigan State's offense just cannot generate rim pressure, even with Tyson Walker having that kind of feel. But I'll spare you the details of some of these notes, and I'll ask you all the question that kept coming to my mind, and I'm gonna make sure I ask it right. And if it doesn't make sense, we'll kind of work through it. But from what you've seen from Duke so far against take Michigan State's resume out of the thing for a second, right? Coming into the year, what we thought about Michigan State, right? What we've seen from Duke, do you learn more about Arizona in the first 2 games based on Duke's performance, or do you learn more about Michigan State based on how they've played those teams?
That's a very interesting way of putting it, because you didn't ask about Duke per se. That's a good way of putting it. I think based upon what we've seen, like Arizona blew out Southern. Southern's not good, but they blew them out again last night, and Arizona's putting up numbers. I think it says a little more about Arizona at this point, because I think even coming into tonight, we knew Michigan State just for whatever reason can't shoot the ball. I don't. Here's the thing I'll ask you as well, and I'll let Peyton answer your original question. This is back-to-back big-time games Duke's played, and they've played very physical. Do you think that's their MO this year, they took it hard to the Tennessee loss in the tournament where they got punked around? And they said, fuck that. That ain't happening again. We're going to be physical. We're going to be the aggressors, because that's 2 games in a row now that they have been very physical in defense.
Peyton?
First of all, I agree with what Josh said. I mean, we talked about it Sunday, and I brought up the point specifically about Filipowski, about the physicality of the game against Arizona, and just go back to what happened last year at Tennessee. Like, he stayed in foul trouble, and they just beat him up in both of those games, and they ended up losing. I thought he played pretty damn well. He had 4 fouls in this one, but 15 points, 8 rebounds. Played pretty damn well. But to answer your question, Trev, I think 100%, in my opinion, says more about Arizona, and here's why. I think it says more about Arizona because it showed that Caleb Love is willing to take a back seat when he needs to, something he didn't do at North Carolina. And that was a big question coming into this year for me, because obviously I did the Pac-12 conference in our ECB magazine. I wrote about Arizona. And even though I knew they had a lot of talent, I love what Omo Bala brings to the table. Kellen Boswell, I mentioned Sunday. I think all around he's their best player for Arizona this season, specifically what he did against Duke. And I think he's going to continue that trend for the rest of the season. But I think 100% says more about Arizona and the fact that Caleb Love, who's extremely talented, who can go off on any night he wants to as long as he shoots quality shots, I think it says more about them because he's willing to take a back seat to even Omar Ballo, and even now it seems like he's taking a back seat to play third fiddle to Kellen Boswell as well. So I think it says more about Arizona to answer your question.
Quickly on the physicality thing, to answer the question, yes, it's 100%. It's been a focus of John Shire. He's made that point clear in many. I guess the advantage of being in the local market of Duke, North Carolina, Wake Forest, NC State is you see these clips of these interviews that aren't going to hit the national stage for Duke, of like just the Tuesday afternoon when the local news guy goes to Durham and interviews Coach Shire for something. So like physicality is 100% a focal point. Like, he has made that clear. We've heard that many times so far this year. And then they loaded up their non-con with these games where they're going to be able to put themselves to the test. And I know that's not typical of Duke in the past. And obviously people are going to make the Coach K jokes all they want. But they now are going to come home for a 3-home road stand against, I believe, you said Southern Indiana was who played somebody earlier? Like, they played them as well, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, Southern Indiana played. Southern Indiana played Michigan State last week before this game. Yeah,
right. And it was kind of tough, right? So,
yeah.
Duke has a game against Bucknell, who has a pretty strong front court. LaSalle has a pretty strong front court. They go obviously to at Arkansas as their next premier game after they leave Durham after that 3-game homestand, and then they start off conference play. They play Charlotte and Hofstra there right after a game against Georgia Tech in Atlanta. So they're playing tough teams. They also play Baylor on December 20th, the week of Christmas there. So they did that on purpose. They are specifically gearing themselves up to be built and be ready. We know what the kind of team they are now, and we know that they can change stylistically and understand that that's going to be a huge advantage for them because we know the guard play is only going to get better. Remember Tyrese Proctor being 19 years old, supposed to be a freshman right now.
Two things I want to talk about real quick about this game and just the season in general to start us off. I mentioned Sunday with DeRosa and Josh. I said in games like this in the Champions Classic, I've seen it too many times. Top-level freshmen coming in, they have their breakout type of game. Trevor Keels did it a couple years ago to Kentucky. Tyrese Maxey did it to Michigan State about 3 or 4 years ago. Andrew Wiggins did it against Duke a long time, like 2014, whenever it was, 2013-14. This was Caleb Foster's breakout game. I thought he played amazing. I thought he's a very talented player, and I thought he played well, and he definitely iced the game out towards the end, hitting some big shots. One thing I want to talk about, and this is a question. Do you think, because I don't know what the hell I'm missing here, do you think Xavier Booker would have been better off if he went to Indiana instead of Michigan State?
Yes.
He's 11th in the 24/7 sports rankings. He's a 5-star player. Why is he only playing 5 minutes in a game like this?
Well, the only thing I could think of is you've seen tonight in the first half. He gets in, takes a bad contested 3 in the corner, airballs it essentially, and he comes out, never comes back in. So the only thing I can think of is he is just not doing what Coach Izzo wants and expects out of him. So he's not playing. But yes, I think in hindsight, he would have had at least a little bit more leeway at Indiana to play and show his skills.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think he's better off anywhere at this point. But Indiana, obviously, with some of the front court questions we've had there, honestly, probably.
So I'll put a bow on this Duke win over Michigan State saying this. Duke, they've played 2 very tough games. They go 1-1 in them. The loss to Arizona, the win against Michigan State. Obviously, Duke's got pieces. They were ranked as high as they were preseason. I still think that they've got obviously growing pains. They're going to take another couple losses throughout the course of the year. But the thing tonight that gives me hope for Duke is Caleb Foster's, it looks like his ascension, give him more scoring and athleticism. And obviously Filipowski is going to do his deal. Mark Mitchell, I thought, played a solid game. I think he had 13 points. But they're doing this essentially without Tyrese Proctor really taking off yet. He's really not, through 3 games, really drove it home and had those big time performances. And they're 2-1 with 2 really tough games. Once he takes off and you get everything clicking, I think we'll see the real Duke full force come out. And I think that's exciting for Duke. Let me ask you this to close out the Champions Classic. Based upon what we've seen from these 4 teams over the course of the first 3 games that they've each played, rank the teams.
I knew it. I knew it as soon as you said it. I knew as soon as you said it where it was coming. I already. You know what's funny? I had this prepared because I've been doing podcasts with you now for half a year. I'm starting to figure you out, and I had this written down. So Peyton, go right ahead. I've already, unless you need more time to think. But I was like, I don't think this is hard at all.
First thing, before I rank my teams, and I did have a feeling he was going to ask this damn question.
I do.
One thing about Michigan State. This might be the worst 3-point shooting team Tom Izzo's ever had in his career. 15% from the 3-point line in 3 games or so.
And it went up tonight. It went up.
Yeah, it went up.
They came in at like 6% or something like that, didn't they?
Yeah,
it went up.
It's so crazy because last year, in like the last 7 games, they were shooting like over 40% from 3.
Yeah. They were third in the nation.
Now they're like 350th in the country in
and they only lost one player since
that. Dude, that's so ridiculous. I didn't
Joey
know
Hauser.
one player like Joey Hauser could affect this team that much, like that way, like so negatively. Like it's so crazy. Anyways, Kansas won. I mean, come on now. Michigan State 4. Shit.
That's how you make a power ranking, I guess. Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, those are the easiest for me.
I think we all have the same 4 as why I went last.
I do.
I'll say Duke 2, Kentucky 3.
100%. And I don't think that's a slight to anybody except for Michigan State.
Yeah, I think right now, but I think Kentucky's closer than
I'll
what
tell you
people
what.
think.
Come on, ACC, SEC challenge. How did we not get Kentucky versus Duke? Either in Cameron Indoor, Rupp Arena, my backyard. I don't give a shit. Like, how did we not get that matchup?
One thing I know you, I just want to throw this out here because I think it's important. I like how you asked the question about the power ranking. Think about like how important Duke is for. We mentioned like stylistically how important they are and how quickly they can change things, be physical one game, be a different team another night. They're not even playing power, and I mean Stewart played 3 minutes. They're not even playing power yet. I know I think he's dealing with a little bit of an ankle, but like they still have a couple guys. They've only played 9 the last couple of games. They can go down to 10 and 11. They can really reach down the bench and play these freshmen that I think are going to be really good. And I think we'll start to see it against, like I said, teams like Hofstra, Charlotte, Queens in a couple of weeks where we can really see them just try things out and let those guys get some run. Obviously, we've seen at least Coach K teams in the past. Obviously, in the big moments you mentioned, some freshmen have had their moments, but we've also seen teams, Duke teams in the past. I know John Shire only being there a couple of years, but we've seen them use those games at home where the place is rocking, but it's not exactly a tough opponent. A la like at Georgia Tech or whatever in a couple of weeks, or the start of the year as Charlotte home, Queens home, things like that. Use the home environment to get those guys' confidence up early to send them off into ACC play, where I think it'll be really tough this year.
Completely agree. Let's round this episode out of After Hours here. The other one, non-Champions Classic, top 25 matchup between Marquette and Illinois, with Marquette going into Champaign for the Gavitt games. And this was an incredible fast pace. Like, these two teams just went at each other and traded the lead back. But at the end of the day, the Big East reigning player of the year, Tyler Kolek, just showed out again why he's should be the favorite to repeat that award and be an All-American first teamer. 24 points on 10 of 18 shooting, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and really took control of the game there at the end. And even with all that, Illinois had the opportunity to tie or take the lead very late in the game. Marquette wins 71-64, goes into Champaign and gets a massive quad one to continue that ascension of what we all think they can be, not only in the Big East, but nationally this year, fighting for maybe a 1 seed. Your guys' an instant reaction to Marquette's big win in Champaign, Illinois.
2 things. Tyler Kolek is my favorite player in the country that's not a Jayhawk to watch. Love this kid. 24 points, 10 to 18 from the field, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 turnovers, which, I'm a point guard. I never like to see that many turnovers, but he had 24 points. He's amazing, and he talks a little shit, and I love watching this kid. That's one key. Second key, I think really helped Marquette. They dominate the points in the paint. 44 points in the paint compared to Illinois' 20. I think that was a big key. Illinois, Terrence Shannon Jr., when he's on, Phil talked about it in our group chat. When he's on, he's one of the better players in the country, definitely an All-American type of player. He had 21 tonight. Too many times I've seen when watching this game, the offense got too stagnant and wasn't rotating. There wasn't a lot of movement and couldn't score the basketball that way. And I think Illinois will be fine. They just got a lot of questions surrounding the offense, and Marquette's one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, I won't spend any time on Marquette just because I've made my thoughts clear on them. I think they're 1 seed potential caliber team coming into the year. Josh, obviously you did plenty of research with them on the Big East preview, but backing up the Terrence Shannon point, like, look, from an NBA draft standpoint last year, I mean, I had him in the latter half of the first, early second for most of the year. And then basically from the time they hit that skid down from just, that point guard play being so inconsistent last year. Obviously, Rodgers has been, even in this just this game alone, 6 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Being able to have the ball more and to be able to be more effective as a playmaker has really, really opened up their offense, even though with the struggles. So obviously, I think that has turned my thoughts around on Shannon there. I'll share this with Illinois. Obviously, I'm not going to overreact to what did we say earlier this year? Preseason games don't mean anything except for the fact that Illinois did beat Kansas in the preseason, so obviously that has to matter somewhat. And I only mean that for the fact that, like, I felt this way earlier in the year anyway, even just a few weeks ago. I think Illinois, if they can get things right, I know Phil's been calling out already on Twitter, even still at work tonight, calling out the coaching staff, right? But, like, he's got a great point, and if they can reel that in, I've never been the biggest fan of Coach Underwood, but I think they're going to be one of those teams, like, we're going to look up, and if they're in the Elite Eight, a la like Miami did 2 years ago, right before they made the Final Four the following year, I'm not surprised if Illinois does that. I'm just not, because I think it's a very similar style team, but the Coleman-Hawkins contested shots down the stretch have got to stop, and that is the only point I would really just kind of like, I hate to be the guy that starts off this beautiful thing about, hey, by the way, Illinois' Elite Eight team, for what it's worth, love Coleman-Hawkins as an NBA prospect, just as a what the two-way ability, that kind of size can be, but my God, I mean, scouts are running the other direction in the gym, seeing those kind of contested shots down the stretch, and I know that was some of those were not his fault, but Illinois' offense, again, just has to figure that out. I think they will in time. I think this was a really good test for them, for this game to be this close for most of it. I think that speaks more to just how Illinois is going to hit their ceiling later in the year with a Big Ten that I think we've touched on not enough, that isn't maybe as good as we probably would want or think or hope. So Illinois, I think, is going to be in that upper tier of the Big Ten once again.
Yeah, and Illinois, you look at the stats real quick. I mean, they shoot the three ball. They have, let's say this, they have 3-point shooters. They hit 11 tonight, 11 of 33 for 33%. So the percentage is a little under the average we would like, but they hit 11 of them. Coleman-Hawkins, 5 turnovers. As a team, they have 15. That's just too many. They can't hit all these threes. They can't out-rebound them. They can't out-assist them. They can't basically beat them in every team statistical positive category and then turn the ball over 15 times and take contested shots. So, you know, Damask hit 3 threes himself. He what did he end up with? 18 points. Him and Shannon, they combined for 39 points in the backcourt. That's going to win you a lot of ball games, especially in a Big Ten where it's more of a grind it, slow it down type of game. But yeah, Coleman-Hawkins has got to be better. When he's good, they'll win games. When he's iffy or not so great, they're going to lose some games that they shouldn't, to like Minnesota in the barn. But Marquette's really freaking good. Cam Jones is amazing, hitting scoop layups when Illinois is putting a lot of pressure on him, getting and ones, just doing crazy stuff, and then college closing the show. Oso Iguodaro is one of the biggest matchup nightmares in college basketball with his athleticism and size, being that versatile as a 4 or 5 kind of stretch player. They're starting 5 especially, but even the rotational guys, Marquette can put so much pressure on your defense with the way they can spread you out, cut and pass and move. Marquette's going to be a handful all year.
Iguodaro got hurt too, by the way, but on the bright side for Big East fans and Marquette fans, they have a 6-day break here, which is pretty abnormal for a team of their caliber going into MTE season here, or what do we call them, turkey turnies or whatever the hell you want to call them. But you know, going into turkey tourney season here at the end of this week, Marquette does have a 6-day break. They essentially don't play again until mid-early next week. So he did get hurt. He was favoring the other shoulder a couple times there. It was just on a dumb, like, could have been dislocated if it turned hard enough. I'm not a doctor, but just didn't look great in the moment. And I'm very glad that it seems like it's okay. But sigh of relief, Marquette fans, because it did seem like, you know, leaving this game, it's a nice thing to know that you have a 6-day break with arguably your second best player.
Yep. And so rounding this out, like, of the 3 games we talked about, we have technically 3 winners in Kansas, Duke, and Marquette. But if you look at it in a certain aspect, there was 5 winners tonight. You can throw Kentucky and Illinois based upon their projections coming in and then leaving out of these games, even in a loss. I think their profiles went up. So the only loser in tonight's games really was Michigan State, because I think they've got a long way to go. But incredible night of college basketball. The best night is early in the season so far, and it gives a lot of hope going forward for a lot of these different ball clubs. Kansas stays number 1. Duke rebounds. A lot of good stuff coming out of tonight. We appreciate you guys that stay up and watch us with us. Follow along on the Twitter and on YouTube. So for some reason, Twitter views, it doesn't show up because it shows up the YouTube views. So when you go back and look, people watch this. So Or if you do go back and watch us later on tomorrow or down the road on the YouTube, drop a subscribe button. We will do this periodically throughout the year after big nights of college basketball. But it's late. We're on the East Coast. We're ready to get the hell out of here and get to bed. We will talk to you guys Thursday on episode 163. We're going to talk about this, talk about the weekend ahead, and so much more college basketball action. We thank you. Enjoy it, and we will catch you guys down the road.